The San Francisco fog is clearing, making room for a cloud. Google Cloud's 4th annual event, where thousands of attendees have traveled from around the world to learn, collaborate, and build a cloud for everyone. Welcome to Next 2019 in San Francisco. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on the Next Live show. I'm Rajah.
And I'm Stephanie Wong. If you can't be here in person this week, we've got you covered. To make sure you catch everything, we have 6 live stream channels, including this one, the Next Live show. Let's kick things off with insights on this morning's keynote from Google Cloud leaders Aparna Sinha, Group Product Manager, Kubernetes, and Quentin Hardy, Head of Editorial. Great to see you both.
Thanks for having us.
Quentin, we were just here together 9 months ago talking about the state of cloud computing, and that wasn't very long ago. What have you seen that's changed?
That's cloud time for you. 9 months equals a year. And 2 things stick out. One, obviously, new leadership. We have a new leader at Google Cloud, and the first keynote is very telling. He's focused on customer-ready, enterprise-ready products and services, and a wealth of them, and customer testimonials backing that up, which is fun to see. The other thing is the products, a wealth of products, a year's worth of products in 9 months. I'd like to just cite one of them, the Cloud Services Platform, which is now called Anthos. Last summer, when it was launched, it was prospective. It was going to be in alpha and then beta very rapidly. It's ready in 9 months with more features and products and services within it than we could imagine having done this quickly. Yay to your team. And what this allows is for you to create, deploy, update, run, check, secure all these applications on-prem, in Google Cloud, on all the clouds, wherever you want. Just take the asset and make it grow and make it live better in a system that is open and secure and aimed at customer needs.
Now, Aparna, you've been closely involved in the creation of the Cloud Services Platform, or Anthos now. Based on what TK has already shared, it already does a lot, right? But it's going to do even more. So what will that look like, and why should that matter to our customers?
Yeah, well, great computing platforms don't just add features or, reduce cost. Great computing platforms actually change the game entirely. They give customers capabilities that they've not had before. And that's what Anthos is. Anthos, can be used even if you're not in the cloud. So it can be used in your on-prem data center to give you a cloud-like environment, cloud-like agility and speed, but also cloud-like control and centralized risk management. And it gives both your operators and your developers a level of visibility, operational visibility, as well as ease of use for the developer that is hard to find anywhere else. And then if you do decide that you're going to use a public cloud, Anthos gives you what no one else gives you, which is choice. And it allows you to write once and deploy your services anywhere. And that's, what really accelerates your business success.
The reason we like open systems, yes, it's a better way to make more secure software, it's better choice, you get more velocity. These are all great advantages. There's an element of self-interest here too, though. By leaving it up to the customer, by giving them that freedom and choice, it compels us to stay competitive. We have to listen more closely, we have to respond more quickly. And if you have locked-in customers, it's kind of a recipe for mediocrity.
I think one of the things that a lot of customers like about the cloud is that they don't have to worry about all of the things. They can focus on the things that are important to them and things that add value to their business. So for example, developers and engineers can focus on differentiated capabilities that are unique, and the cloud takes care of all the rest. But why only in the cloud? This is something that you ought to be able to do on-prem as well. And that's what Anthos does. It dissolves the layers that are underneath the differentiating pieces, and those are managed by cloud, by Google Cloud, or they're managed automatically. And that way, your business can focus on accelerating itself.
Right. It seems like it's picking the workloads that make sense for our customers. Quentin, you mentioned before we started that modernizing and migrating was another big keynote takeaway. How does Google Cloud's integration with and migration of enterprise systems help our customers?
Exactly what Aparna was just saying. Why can't it do more? And in this case, why can't your data do more? Why can't all that hard work that people established over decades, learning their customers, learning their market, learning their products, be taken to the cloud or be empowered inside on-prem systems and get new life, get new power, find new insights, with ML and AI or by employing other cloud services, just refreshing all that and taking that legacy and using that as an insight to move into the future.
Speaking of this focus on our users, Quentin, what do you think are some of the most compelling examples of learnings that come with working with our customers?
You know what's easy to do in tech? Deliver a lot of complexity. And some companies love complexity because it's kind of like lock-in. If you can get somebody to learn all that complexity, they'll never learn anything else. They'll be afraid. Right. You know what's hard? Simplicity. Simplicity on the back end for the provider is really tough because you got to consider a lot of use cases. You got to build in a way that's going to work for a lot of different interests and people and locations. That requires a lot of careful thought. And you've got to have a kind of empathy for what the customer wants to do. What does the customer want to do? The customer wants to do the things it's good at. The customer, he or she wants to proceed with the things they've learned in the market, with the products they're passionate about. That might not actually be container management. That's something we're passionate about. That's something we do. And in some ways, this is economics 101. Let everybody focus on their comparative advantage. We are freeing up customers. We are giving them that simplicity so they can get stuff out of the way and just work on the problems to serve their customers.
Aparna, Quentin's been talking a lot about business folks, but what does this mean for the operators and the developers who are going to be using this technology?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a game changer for the operators and the developers. I would say there's three kind of big changes. Number one is the right ones deploy anywhere. For developers, it means that you can focus on the things that add differentiation to your business. For the CIO, it means actually that you can really concentrate your talent. You don't fragment your talent across multiple different code bases, across multiple different types of tools. And if you think about it, every customer I've talked to always says that talent is the most scarce resource, particularly engineering talent. It's really hard to hire. It's really hard to, keep the talent motivated. And I think the reason creators are excited about Anthos is, again, for the same reasons, right? Because they also get access to a multi-cloud platform. They also get access to the benefits of something that's, at a level that they can differentiate their code and don't have to worry about the underlying, infrastructure pieces.
Quentin, Google CEO Sundar Pichai was an important part of the Day One keynote as well. What did his presence say about how Google sees the cloud industry?
Well, obviously, you bring out the CEO of Google, he's putting the stamp on it that this is big. And you can't say that enough. And this gets kind of to an abstract reality of where we are right now in the world. There are 4 major players, 5, you could go to 6, 5 to 10 billion in CapEx each. This is a very big stakes operation because this is the infrastructure of the future. As much as you think about airports or highways or deep water ports or telephones and telegraphs in their time, this is the infrastructure of the future that we are building and our competitors are building. We're building it with a certain spirit we've talked about today. We think will give the customers the most power, give individuals of any size, a small company, large company, freelancer, you name it, greater energy, greater power, greater freedom to realize what they want to do in the world.
Thank you so much for joining us again and sharing your insights.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
We've only just begun the first day here at Next 19 San Francisco, and there's still so much coming your way.
As we mentioned earlier, we have 6 live stream channels: build, run, analyze and learn, secure, collaborate, and of course, the next live show.
We'll have product demos, hand-picked bite-sized breakout sessions for you to watch, which we're calling Dev Bites, as well as interviews with Google experts and more. Visit g.co/nextonair to see the full program schedule.
And join the Google Cloud conversation using hashtag GoogleNext19 across our social channels. And be sure to keep the next live show streaming throughout the day so you don't miss a thing.
Coming up on the next live show, our fellow developer advocate Kelsey Hightower will join us to share his thoughts on Anthos and serverless. Keep streaming, and we'll see you after this short break. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the next live show. As promised, fellow developer advocate Kelsey Hightower is here to join us. Thanks for being here, Kelsey.
I'm happy to be here.
So earlier we heard TK's keynote. What are you most excited about?
Well, given my background in Kubernetes, I'm most excited about Anthos, which is kind of giving Kubernetes to more people in their environment, so you can run it on-prem, you can run it on Google Cloud, also like the addition of Istio, so giving people the ability to manage the networking plane like they do for their compute. And I think the other thing I'm most happy about is more managed databases. So now having SQL Server, lots of our customers ask for SQL Server. So pairing managed databases with something like Kubernetes is kind of a perfect match.
Right. And Google has a really strong tradition of developer teams passing on creative software innovations to our emerging developer audiences. What tools can you tell us about that are also empowering our enterprise developers with years of experience in proprietary systems?
Yeah, I think for the biggest thing is like meeting developers where they are. So kind of integrating with their IDEs, giving them familiar open source technology. So a lot of developers are running things like Docker and Kubernetes on their laptop. Envoy, packaged in Istio. So what we're doing is taking all these open source projects that you may be using on your own machines, or maybe even internally, and we're just adding a lot of that support stuff that you would need to run it in production in the enterprise.
So we can see that values are shifting up the stack with higher level sets of services and new abstractions. How is automation evolving the developer experience?
Previously, we've been trying to automate a lot of bad practices, right? Like if you automate directly on the virtual machine, for example, now you're starting to automate around scripts. We had a lot of configuration management tools, but the APIs weren't there. Now as we move up the stack, things like Kubernetes give us a declarative interface for deploying on a distributed system. So containers, batch jobs, cron jobs. So now when you start to think about automation, you're finally targeting APIs. So what we were able to do for traditional software development, we're now able to do for infrastructure. So bringing things like Istio, which gives you a declarative API for the networking, things like our serverless add-on, give you a declarative API for your serverless stack. So when you look across the spectrum now for infrastructure, you're now programming finally towards well-defined APIs.
So this is sort of supporting people where they are. And I want to talk about GKE on-prem and hybrid workloads. What are some of the benefits of it, and what can sysadmins kind of reap from that?
Yeah, I think since Kubernetes came out, everyone was like, I want it, right? And GKE, when you click that button, you just get this magical cluster, production ready to go. And the next thing is like, well, what about my existing environment? And many people have kind of tried to do it, and not everyone has the same level of expertise or time. So the nice thing about this is that we're going to take GKE, the same bits that we use to host on GCP, we're now bringing that into your data center. So we've given people clear guidance on the lower level requirements, and then we just layer GKE on top, and then we give you the same APIs, the same control planes. So if you're using things like Terraform on GCP, you're now able to point that same stack in your on-prem environment, get that same workflow that you love so much on GKE.
Nice. Now, Kubernetes is being adopted and adapted to meet more and more technical needs. Tell us about how GKE Hub helps admins with hybrid environments do their jobs better.
Yeah, so GKE Hub, so once you kind of get a taste of Kubernetes, the next thing is you want Kubernetes everywhere, right? Every problem you see, you want to rub Kubernetes on top of it. So a lot of our customers have more than one cluster. If you think about it, a lot of our customers that value high availability, they'll have a cluster per region or per zone. So once you start to have a collection of clusters, even you bring in on-prem into the mix, you need a place to aggregate all of those things. So what GKE Hub represents is the ability to aggregate all of your Kubernetes clusters, even the ones on-prem. And then once you have that, you have a centralized place to do things like policy management. So once you have a Kubernetes cluster, the thing you have to think about is security across all those clusters. And one thing that's kind of hard or error-prone is if you have to try to figure out how to get your configuration correct across all of those clusters. So the hub is going to be the anchor point where we build a lot of those additional tools that allow you to manage everything from a central place.
Nice. All right, well, thanks, Kelsey. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Awesome, thank you.
Right, now, if you have more questions for Kelsey or a comment about the GKE on-prem talk, reach out to us on social media using the hashtag GoogleNext19, and we'll try to answer some of your questions during the show. And of course, we'll see Kelsey back here in about an hour to talk serverless solutions for developers.
But right now, let's talk about perks. When you watch the next live show, you'll get exclusive access to some sessions only available to live stream viewers that we're calling Dev Bites.
So grab a notebook and enjoy the first Dev Bite on Anthos, originally known as CSP. Find out how you can leverage GKE on-prem and the Anthos product suite to manage a true hybrid environment.
Hi, my name is Weston Hutchins, and I'm a product manager for GKE on-prem. Even with more and more workloads moving to the public cloud, on-prem software remains a necessity for many enterprise organizations. Every enterprise has apps that are difficult to move to the cloud or restrictions on where sensitive workloads can run. Many are looking for a true hybrid story, one where they can modernize the apps for the cloud, but continue running in their own data center. Many companies have looked to Kubernetes to give them a consistent environment between on-prem and cloud. But getting started with Kubernetes is challenging. There are over 50 distributions, and choosing the right tools to install Kubernetes can prove daunting. And then once you get a cluster up and running, you enter the land of day 2 operations, where you not only need tooling, but considerable operational expertise to manage the lifecycle of a Kubernetes cluster. We find a lot of customers that start down the route of building their own in-house DIY tooling to manage Kubernetes later struggle to keep that tooling up to date. Google's answer for hybrid is Cloud Services Platform, a stack that takes the best of cloud-native open technologies like Kubernetes and Istio and lets you run them in your data center. But the key benefit of CSP is the collection of cloud services that integrate your on-prem and cloud workloads into a single unified experience. Services like binary authorization for security, unified logging and monitoring through Stackdriver, or centralized policy management that syncs access controls across all of your clusters. At Next 19, we'll deep dive into the infrastructure layer for CSP, GK On-Prem. GK On-Prem takes all of the technology behind GKE and installs it on top of VMware in your data center. Once installed, you register your cluster with Google's Cloud Console to give your administrators and developers a single pane of glass for managing their clusters and apps. In our Talkin' Next, we'll take a detailed look into a real-world use case. Arctic, one of our CSP solution providers, recently rolled out GK On-Prem to one of their customers, Optiva, a telecommunications services company. We'll walk through Optiva's architecture, show how GK On-Prem integrated with their existing tools and workflows, and give some tips for your own installation of GK On-Prem. Check out the breakout session online, and we'll get you up and running with GK On-Prem in no time.
Okay, stick around. The next session will begin shortly. Remember to check out the 5 other channels for curated content on Build, Run, Analyze and Learn, Secure, and Collaborate. And after the session, Kelsey Hightower returns to talk about serverless solutions for our developers. See you back here in an hour. Back to the next live show.
We couldn't get enough of him, so we brought him back. Joining us once more is Kelsey Hightower, developer advocate at Google Cloud. Kelsey, talk to us about how serverless solutions help developers.
Yeah, so I think serverless solutions for people new to serverless, it's kind of like we've learned a lot of patterns from 4 or 5 years of Kubernetes. And all the things you need to do to provide that higher level interface that you give all your developers or that you enjoy working with every day, that's where serverless attempts to start. So we take some of those patterns and we give people the smallest interface that they want to do. So if you think about it, if a file gets uploaded to a Google Cloud Storage bucket, you can just invoke your business logic and execute your code for you.
Now, people want serverless, but they also want containers. How is Google enabling developers to have both the velocity of serverless and the flexibility of containers?
That's the thing that I'm probably the most proud of. So when serverless was first introduced to most people, they always thought about it as functions as a service. You write a single function, an event comes in, it calls your function. But there's a lot of existing business logic that needs a little bit more than just a single function. Maybe there's some bootstrapping code, you got to set up things like logging, but a little bit more flexibility and your choice of runtime. So what we decided to do was take a lot of the learnings from Kubernetes and allow developers to deploy their own Docker container. So any runtime that you want to use, any business logic that you want, any libraries, and we're going to execute that container just like we do with our cloud functions. So they scale to 0, they scale up quick, and they give you the same serverless workflow that you're used to without abandoning all the good things that come with containers.
Nice. You've talked a little bit about, serverless isn't brand new, but we're changing the way that we're sort of approaching it. Can you tell us a little bit more about how Google is changing that serverless experience?
So I think for us is that our DNA has always been around this idea of this kind of software delivery chain, right? So this idea that when you build a software, we like to build it once, we sign those images, and then we decide where we want them to be deployed. So that means giving people a bit of choice. So typically, serverless has been kind of these proprietary cloud platforms. Once you're in there, you're kind of locked in. What we decided to do is make sure that it runs everywhere. So wherever you as a developer want to run, just like most Google tools and libraries, we allow our serverless stack to run wherever you are. So I think what we're doing different here is taking some of the things that worked well in the Kubernetes space and combining them with some of the developer experiences that we know that people are looking for, and just combining the two. So flexibility without losing the trade-offs and benefits of going serverless.
That's great. So how does our serverless offering help our developers, and how is it different?
I think where it's different is that you get to use a familiar tool chain that has been popularized over the last couple of years, right? So containers are the way most people think about having full control over their own software. Then to be able to take that software and outsource all of the delivery, right? So security, IAM integration, being able to connect to things like Spanner and BigQuery, taking all of that kind of toil away from you and just say, hey, check in your containers and we'll run them for you. So what we're trying to do is kind of make it very seamless from a developer. Once you go from idea to deployed, we're just trying to give you that same GCP experience at the container level.
Nice. Now, how do our serverless offerings give developers a more open and portable offering so that customers can potentially move their workloads around?
So one thing, the trend that has been really prevalent in GCP is in Kubernetes, we started with Docker, popular open source container runtime, and then we shipped an open source project, Kubernetes, which is the underlying platform for GKE. And then when we thought about entering serverless, so we've had App Engine for almost 11 years now, and we decided that what would we do if we wanted to make App Engine be more open? So we decided to start with the Knative project. So Knative has a lot of serverless components you can think of as a serverless toolkit, things like builds, a function framework, and most of that stuff is laid on top of Kubernetes. So what we've done is we've taken the best parts of Kubernetes, again, those design patterns that we talked about, how do I just run my application? We've extracted that out into a high-level set of libraries called Knative, and there's a hosted version we call Cloud Run, and we also give you the ability to run Cloud Run on top of GKE. So the benefit there is that if you need to do some machine learning, you can take that serverless workload and run it on a specialized VM with a GPU or a TPU. So you're no longer restricted to just our serverless runtime environments. You now have the whole of GCP opened up to you, even in the serverless context.
You touched on this a bit, but a lot of our customers tell us that they have custom requirements like specific runtimes, custom binaries, or workload portability. And more often than not, they turn to containers for an answer. Can you talk about how our GKE serverless add-on allows you to bring serverless to containers?
Yeah, so when you think about a lot of these abstractions change over time. We went from mainframe to physical machines to virtualization to higher level platforms like App Engine. What we now have with the container image, this ability to build the code that you want, use the runtime that you want, any version that you want, and now that becomes a portable bit. You can run this on a virtual machine, you can run this on GKE, you can run this on Cloud Run, and you can also run it on App Engine. So I think what a developer gets is this ability to truly write once and deploy wherever they want.
Now, while we believe Google Cloud is a great place to run all types of workloads, some customers, we know that they need to run on premises or across multiple clouds, right? So tell us a little bit more about Knative and its role in giving developers the freedom to move stateless containers pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, so our contribution to the ecosystem started with maybe Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes over the 4 or 5 years, you can see it now, it's deployed and offered by every major cloud provider. Lots of people are already running it on-prem. So it has wide adoption. So our strategy of layering Knative on top of Kubernetes just allows us to kind of reap those benefits. So the tools that you're familiar with, we layer Knative on top. So that gives us that portability framework underneath. So no matter where you're running, whether it's on-prem, different cloud provider, on GCP, you're gonna get the same APIs, right? So we talked earlier about automating those APIs. That's what Kubernetes represents. And I've always said this, Kubernetes is a platform for building platforms. And we've chosen to build our newest serverless platforms on top of Kubernetes.
Can you talk a little bit more about how Knative provides eventing and integrating events from Google or third-party services so you can really extend your applications?
So the big thing to know about Knative is not just Google's project, right? So now we have so many contributors, Red Hat, Cloud Foundry. So a lot of the things that we've seen in the eventing space, like what is an event, how should we accept it, a lot of those open protocols like cloud events, all of that's supported inside Knative. So Knative gives you a couple of components. We call Knative serving, run my container, scale it to 0, start it again when a request comes in. Then you have the eventing piece, so there's an event. And what we wanted to do is make an event portable. So different cloud providers has a different collection of events, different transports for events. So what we wanted to do is make sure that the event framework was very flexible. If you want to integrate with GitHub or GCP or some other service that you have that you defined yourself, that's also included. So what we've done is we've given all of these framework pieces, and what we've done with Cloud Run is we've kind of curated the perfect stack for you.
Great. And is there a particular way in which we're able to solve that problem that you describe of like having all of these things live in all of these different places?
Yeah, so I think for us is Kubernetes is super flexible. So with that flexibility allows every cloud provider to do their own integrations. For example, on-prem, we come out of the gate integrating with things like with VMware and F5. So we abstract away some of the differences between all of these platforms. So that's what Kubernetes' job is. Once you have that set of abstractions, things like Knative just sit on top and naively assume that those abstractions are there, and then we can get on with building those higher level platforms. So Kubernetes is a huge part of this, and the community has been doing this work for over 4 years, abstracting away the differences between these cloud providers. So whenever you build on top of that, we just inherit all of those benefits.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us today, Kelsey.
Awesome, thanks for having me.
If you want to rewatch or share our conversation with Kelsey on serverless solutions for developers, visit g.co/nextonair.
Now we turn our attention to the next DevByte. Here's a detailed technical look at networking design techniques for running applications at scale. Check this out.
Like many developers interested in microservices, you start off dabbling with Google Kubernetes Engine, our powerful cluster manager and orchestration system for running your Docker containers. First, you accept all the defaults and then slowly start modifying a few parameters to support your application.
As you spend more time, your confidence increases. More traffic and mission-critical applications move to GKE, which is great. You will be able to benefit from GKE's advanced cluster management features.
Soon enough, your cluster size gradually starts increasing. Things seems to be going fine until one day when you start hitting scalability and manageability issues that can often be avoided by implementing some key best practices during cluster creation. Over the next few sections, we will be covering some of the best practices, features, and designs in GKE networking that can help you scale and manage your GKE footprint as your business grows.
First, let's talk about VPC native clusters. As you know, Kubernetes mandates direct pod-to-pod connectivity, but there is more than one way to achieve this. By default, Kubernetes uses static routes for pod networking, which requires the Kubernetes control plane to maintain these routes to each node. This comes at a scaling cost. In GKE, we give you the option to create clusters in VPC native mode, which provides container native networking. VPC native mode is enabled with a single click and enables connectivity between all the pods in your VPC without the overhead of route scaling. The VPC control panel automatically manages routing setup for pods, and the native integration of container networking in the VPC fabric improves scalability and integration between Kubernetes and other VPC features.
Kubernetes also makes very liberal use of IP addresses, which simplifies the system and makes it easier to use and comprehend. But on the flip side, this makes IP management a challenge for Kubernetes deployment. This is exacerbated in a hybrid deployment or where IPs are fragmented, making IPs a scarce resource. VPC Native solves this by providing flexibility in defining your cluster scale requirements upfront for resources like pods, nodes, and services. So instead of having 100 resources and thousands of IPs, you can now have 100 resources and 128 IPs. This allows for Kubernetes to reduce its IP footprint, thereby improving the overall IP utilization.
VPC native clusters also enable other enterprise-grade features. For example, sharing VPCs between projects, IAM and role separation, providing anti-spoofing security in our SDN stack, and also private clusters for cluster isolation.
Apart from scaling, security is another criteria that needs to be considered in best practice. Enterprise users require a deployment in which your services and networks are isolated and accessible only within trusted boundaries. GKE provides this through private clusters. Private clusters makes the worker node and the cluster master accessible only within the trusted boundaries. Any unauthorized access to your control plane is set to default deny. For a road warrior use case in enterprise, private cluster also provides a walled garden access to control plane through private endpoints, which is provisioned by the customer.
Another best practice to be aware of for applications at scale is how you expose your services to the internet. When you need to deploy your applications, you may start off using a cluster-based ingress controller such as Nginx or HA proxy. This is really familiar for a lot of us. It's just a standard proxy that you would run on your laptop. You would then expose your application to the internet using a layer 4 Kubernetes service load balancer. However, when your application scales up, you will want to use the Google Ingress implementation in GKE. The GKE Container Native Ingress is a globally scalable, low-latency, distributed proxy layer that supports many of the built-in features such as caching, authentication, and DDoS protection. You won't want to fiddle with how many instances of your proxies to scale up to, or worry about how to absorb an attack.
In addition, the Google Ingress has built-in support for container-native load balancing using network endpoint groups. This means that the network traffic will be balanced directly to the container in your VPC, skipping the overhead of bouncing through the Kubernetes kubeproxy layer. You'll also be able to easily debug your traffic as your connections no longer need address translation to get to their destination. There are also other subtle advantages of using Google Ingress instead of cluster-based controllers, such as connection imbalance and accurate end-to-end health checks for your backends.
GKE makes the job of deploying a scalable Kubernetes much less daunting and offers many features that allow you to future-proof your deployment.
We have only scratched the surface here, and there are many other techniques that helps in scalability and manageability of your cluster. Please attend the HYB 314 session at Next 2019 SF to learn more about these tools and tips.
Remember, you can rewatch that DevBite or the session in its entirety, scalable and manageable, deep dive into GKE on demand at g.co/nextonair. But let's switch gears now and talk about PayPal. Most of us know that PayPal provides a global online payment system, but what you might not know is how Google Cloud's artificial intelligence and machine learning gives PayPal the ability to provide enhanced, customized experience to their customers and merchants even faster. Take a look.
Today, we're seeing transformation all around the world. Data is exploding. Consumer expectations are changing. As there is growth in online commerce, there is a huge need to support that. Unless actually you change how you think, you'll not be able to go through this transformation. Public cloud technologies are no longer an if, it's definitely a matter of when. We picked Google Cloud, and that's made a huge difference. Developers must be artists. They should focus on painting great experiences for the customers. With Google Cloud, you now have systems that are more reliable, up all the time, secure, and economically viable. That means better productivity for our engineers.
We have improved the velocity for my developers. Say I want 100 VMs now, and in 2 minutes, those VMs are set up. They are impacting my end customers or consumers and merchants because now they are getting the features faster. And that's huge.
We had to get way better at leveraging our data. The expertise that Google had in machine learning and artificial intelligence was a key factor. And now we can go down to each individual merchant and each individual consumer and give them a catered experience. PayPal is not just a payments utility. We are a company with a larger purpose for humanity, helping people who did not have access to services that you and I take for granted. That's what we are trying to do with payments. Google Cloud is going to allow us to take our business to the next level. And that is really exciting.
It's time for us to step away. After the next session, you'll want to meet us back here if you're considering hybrid cloud for your work. Hen Goldberg, Google Anthos GKE Engineering Director, will join us for a deep dive on a skill that is critical to any business that demands developer velocity and quality from GCP. Stick around, you're watching the next live show from San Francisco.
Hi there, and thanks for joining us. I'm Rajah.
And I'm Stephanie Wong. Many of us are reaching for hybrid cloud nirvana, which makes the workplace mobility between on-premise and cloud computing ideal for our work. To help us navigate through this, we welcome Hen Goldberg, Engineering Director for Google Cloud. Nice to have you here.
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Now, hybrid cloud is a common strategy that businesses look to modernize while still supporting their current applications. how does Google Cloud approach this particular challenge?
So first of all, it's important to understand why customers want to modernize and what they're looking for that. And the most important thing is for them, in order to compete, they have to increase their developer agility and help them to be more focused. And they really want to take advantage of the amazing capabilities that are available in the cloud and using new cloud services. But they have to make a decision and a choice because they cannot modernize everything at once. That's one of their concerns. The second thing is that they also have concerns from regulations that requires them to stay on premises. So from their perspective, it's a reality that hybrid is here to stay, and they have to choose a hybrid strategy in order to modernize and advance their business. For us in Google Cloud, we understand that we need to support our customers in their journey. Okay, and our goal is to make sure that we help them reduce the risk instead of increasing the risk when going through this journey. And risks are coming in different levels. For example, not fragmenting your talent and allowing to create a consistent experience everywhere, and also really leveraging the existing assets you have today. So not asking them to buy new hardware, for example, but really blending into their existing environment.
And how does this truly differ from other hybrid offerings?
Google puts the user at first, in the center, and we understand that our customers appreciate to have choice. Okay, they want to be able to choose where they're going to deploy their workloads, what kind of tools to use, which services to use. And our goal is to make that possible while reducing risk. We do it by building our platform based on open source technologies, which are ensuring that their workloads are portable and we are not locking them in. And we are also now approaching multi-cloud strategically and giving consistent experience wherever customers choose to deploy their workloads.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, what components make up Anthos, and how do those components work together to provide a really integrated approach for our customers?
So Anthos is an opinionated platform managed by Google. In the foundation, in the core of it, we are using open source technologies originated by Google like Kubernetes, Istio, and Knative. But this is not sufficient for our customer to manage the heterogeneous environments they have. On top of that, we are building a multi-cloud, multi-cluster control plane that lets our customers connect to all of their environments and manage them in a consistent through a single pane of glass. We also give them tools to manage policies and controls in all of those environments. But not everything is containerized, and this is also about investing with what they have today. So on top of that, we are creating a service management platform, which allows them to connect all their services, regardless of what the compute there is. And on top of everything, we have an awesome marketplace that allows us to provide both first-party and third-party applications available in all of those environments.
So you just mentioned investing in what our customers are already using today. How can Anthos be used to help them modernize in place?
So what we hear from our customers that when they come and they want to use new cloud services, they have first to qualify and make sure that the cloud meets their bar. Right? Let's say they want to use BigQuery or even GKE. They need to go through the specific process, usually manual process, to make sure they can let their developers use it. With GKE on-prem, they don't need to go through that process because we bring this technology into their data center and they know it meets the bar. So that's actually the fastest way for them to innovate.
That's great. What about config management with Anthos? How can you write multi-cluster policies right out of the box?
So that's a great question. I think that the number one concern that CIOs have is how they manage risk. And specifically, how can they make sure that they know who access what resources and making sure that they know what policies are applied everywhere. And when you have more and more environments, you have to build more and more tools and have more people manage that. So Anthos config management allows you to manage those policies from a centralized place. And even if by accident or by a malicious user, someone is trying to break that policy, automatically we will apply that policy and bring that environment back to be compliant.
Great.
So more environments, more tools. Can you elaborate on what we're doing to give users the visibility they need so that they can see what's happening across all these environments?
Yeah, so we are leveraging open APIs, which allows us to actually integrate with every environment wherever the user chooses. And we are creating tools, centralized tools in the control plane that gives you signals or monitoring data from all of those environments in a consistent way. We're also leveraging things like Knative. We just announced Cloud Run as beta to give a simple and effective user experience for developers, again, to deploy to all of those environments. So when I think about it, it's not about portability of workloads, but it's actually about portability of skills. Can my developers, can my service operators use the same set of tools regardless of which environment they want to use? And by leveraging open source technologies, this is actually possible.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm curious, how are customers using Anthos today, and what are some of the more interesting use cases that you may have come across?
I'm smiling because ever since we've announced back then, it was CSP 8 months ago, as Alpha, we've seen an overwhelming excitement with our customers. So over 1,000 customers showed interest just during Next to try out CSP Anthos. And we see different type of use cases. So I would say for someone like HSBC, they were excited to give their developers platform, a modern platform, without having to go through all the qualification, making sure that the new environment meets the bar. So they're doing both, but they know that for some of their workloads, they will have to stay on-prem. We see other customers like Coles, for example, that are looking to innovate both on-prem and in the cloud and create a consistent environment. And maybe talking about a customer like KeyBank, okay, so they are really excited about the agility. So really leveraging new tools and making sure that they can deploy quickly in other environments. So different customers see different use cases to begin with, but they're all very excited by both agility and reducing risk.
Thanks, Ken, for walking us through the possibilities of Anthos.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, if you want to rewatch or share Ken's interview or any other content you've seen on the Next live show, check out g.co/nextonair. And if you've got a question or comment, reach out to us on social media using the hashtag GoogleNext19.
We have another first look for you on the Next Live show. This next Dev Bite is all about the tools developers should know how to use in order to drive productivity. Take a look.
GCP is a set of solutions and products that can help you solve your toughest business challenges. We have external paying customers that run businesses on our platforms and at massive scale. These customers expect developer velocity and quality.
We have thousands of engineers at Google building this platform at all levels of the stack. These engineers want a seamless developer workflow, deterministic signals, insights, and velocity.
It is GCP engineering productivity team's role to balance these two dimensions between developer velocity and quality. For example, we deploy GCP's console twice a week to our users and with high quality. Our goal is to establish bi-weekly, high-quality releases across GCP.
At Google, we have created a set of guiding principles that let us have both developer velocity and quality. We want to share these principles and the tools that are available to you so you can accelerate at the pace your users expect.
While we at Google initially focused on test engineering, over a decade ago, we started looking at engineering productivity holistically. This gave us the framework to achieve the right balance between developer velocity and quality.
This meant that in addition to doing complex qualification across systems, we started focusing on tooling and infrastructure that enabled developers themselves to qualify their code changes before they commit them.
This, in turn, allows us not only to catch bugs, but prevent them too. This changed the way we built, qualified, and deployed our applications. And we started pushing the boundaries of both developer velocity and quality.
We balance developer velocity and quality at Google and on GCP through Project Health, PH. We track key metrics across developer productivity, release velocity, reliability, and most importantly, quality. We automatically calculate a pH level and aim to achieve a pH level of 5 for all projects.
Our guiding principles are driving test health, avoiding performance regressions, and high-quality automated releases, all of which are anchored in actionable metrics. Let's zoom in on two of these: driving test health and avoiding performance regressions. For driving test health, we aim for hermetic integration tests, fast pre-submits, and elimination of test flakiness. We have built a cloud integration testing framework internally that helps us write tests once and run them against any environment.
We enable developers to catch performance issues early in the development process to avoid performance regressions via a framework that enables developers to create sustainable performance automation that can gate releases on performance criteria. And we aim to improve GCP's quality and deployment by reducing manual toil, increasing automation, eliminating cherry picks, and improving the fidelity of the test signal in our pre-production environments.
Let's dive deeper into what we are doing for the external developer and user. Google works closely with the external Kubernetes and Istio developer communities to enable developer productivity in open source. Kubernetes is an open source system for automating deployment, scaling, and management of containerized applications, while Istio is an open source service mesh that provides traffic management, policy enforcement, and telemetry collection. We are active contributors to Special Interest Group SIG testing in Kubernetes.
Some of the tooling we help build in the open source community includes Prow, the continuous integration CI system used by Kubernetes and a lot of other projects that use Kubernetes. Prow is built on top of Kubernetes, so our CI helps test Kubernetes on Kubernetes.
TestGrid provides a grid of test results, making it easy to see patterns over time, provides fast access, and allows interactive sorting, filtering, grouping, and more. It is highly configurable and integrated with Cloud Build.
Recently, we helped build hermetic testing using Kubernetes in Docker. Kind brings up a conformant Kubernetes cluster locally without any external dependencies for testing Kubernetes changes or integration testing Kubernetes applications. Kubernetes was designed with portability and interoperability in mind, and providers want to enable application portability. Google, alongside other cloud providers, helps out with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation's conformance program, which ensures certified Kubernetes products deliver consistency and portability.
The outside world now uses VMs, Kubernetes containers, scalable storage, GitHub, and so on. Google software is stored in a single shared repository. The development landscape is rapidly changing, and we are evolving our tooling and incorporating external tooling to adapt to this changing landscape. Summarizing, we believe that if you prioritize driving test health, treat performance as a first-class citizen, and have automated CI/CD that enables high-quality releases and measure everything,
you can have the same developer velocity and quality as we do.
Thanks, team. If you want to share this dev bite or watch the complete session, check out Move Fast and Don't Break Things on g.co/nextonair. At Google Cloud, our customer stories are truly inspiring to hear. We take you to Indonesia now to profile Gojek, a company that uses Google Cloud to not only scale quickly, but to bring the marketplace and millions of Indonesians closer together.
In a place like Jakarta, the level of traffic is so bad that it is a real quality of life issue. A lack of access has prevented groups of people, groups of businesses from really achieving their true potential. we started on the realization that the object driver could do so much more, and we expanded our services based on what we thought would be beneficial for the lives of millions of Indonesians.
So Gojek created these very organized marketplaces for people to connect to each other. We are solving people's real problems in a very, very practical manner. And that's where I think the craziness has started.
We scaled 900 times in the first 18 months. We are doing over 3 million orders a day. There are over 150,000 merchants on our platform.
We would not be able to actually achieve this scale without a trusted partner like Google Cloud.
Every 15 seconds, we're getting a ping from our driver app that tells us where they are, what their status is. We're signaling heat maps that come from our Google Cloud data flow so that drivers know where they are most needed. It's about helping drivers and merchants make better decisions for themselves.
Kalau Gojek tetap eksis, kita akan buka 1, 2, dan 3 tempat lagi.
People who previously were mostly concerned around how to put food on the table are now concerned about how they can afford their child's college education. All of that is very inspiring to see how the lives of millions of people are changing.
It's really inspiring to see how Gojek has created opportunities for people across all of Indonesia. All right, now it's time for the next group of sessions to start. Once they're finished, join us back here to learn how to develop for Kubernetes without leaving your IDE. You're watching the next live show from San Francisco.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Wong. Welcome back to the Next Live Show. It's only day 1 of Next, and we've covered a ton of ground already. We started the day with the opening keynote, followed by post-keynote chats with Google leaders and product demos. If you missed any of it, visit g.co/nextonair to watch it all on demand. Now let's throw it over to Mark, who has more information on our boot camps and certification testing taking place right here at Next 19.
Hey, I'm Mark, and I'm here at the Bootcamp section of Google Cloud Next, where we've got thousands of technical practitioners and developers here to learn a new skill or get Google Cloud certified. Attendees can check out trainings, take hands-on labs, or get assessed for Google Cloud certification. Of course, each lifelong learning journey is a unique one, so let's talk to some of the folks who have been Google Cloud certified.
I chose to get a Google certified primarily to have a very good knowledge on Google Cloud, also to have that confidence, especially when you interact with clients, or even within a company when you want to build a system, to have that confidence.
I choose Google Cloud certification to gain the trust of my clients, that I had the technical skills to build the best data pipelines and the architectures for their business requirements.
So I chose to be certified because there is a real value for the certification on the market. Every company is really looking for that, and if you want to work in the cloud, you have to have certifications.
Part of it was knowing that the Google Cloud platform has been growing exponentially. I thought this was the best time to be well aligned with such an environment and technology and get that certification for Google Cloud.
But the certification process doesn't stop there. They're taking their teachings back with them to help their own teams start on their learning journeys.
From the certification, right, I wanted to gain more and more learning from my fellow Google Cloud certified team and Googlers to learn more real-world use cases.
So part of it has been career growth. On my side, there's been a huge spike from the clients that have been reaching out to me. And I've also worked with the team of about 4 of my team members, and would all dedicate a lot of time to studying and learning the whole Google Cloud suite of products that they have to make sure that we're prepared for the certification.
Hopefully this inspires you to start your own learning journey down Google Cloud certification and seeing what you can build.
Thanks, Mark. For more information on becoming Google Cloud certified, be sure to visit cloud.google.com/certification. Joining me now is Priyanka Vergadia, a customer engineer at Google Cloud, who's going to show us how to develop for Kubernetes without leaving your IDE. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm going to talk about Kubernetes and how developers can work within the Visual Studio environment and deploy applications into Kubernetes. So let's jump right in.
Great.
Cool. So I have on the left-hand side my terminals, which we're going to use to do some deployments. And then on the right here, I have Visual Studio Code. So we're going to start off by creating a new application. I'm going to just create a Hello World Node.js application, nothing fancy. So what's happening here is we should be able to see our application created. Once I refresh, it is showing up my application. I have the source files. The front end and the back end are the different services that are in this application. In the front end, we have the 8080 port that's listening to the front end. It's talking to the back end on back end service address. And in the back end, we have the index file that's also talking to 8080. So we're going to change that to 8081 so that we don't have a port conflict. And then at this point, if we go into go and start these services, so I'm going to just check where we are in our terminal. We're at the right place in the front end folder, and we want to do the same for our back end as well. So I'm going to go into the right folder, which is the Hello World Node.js application 2. And then, so we're now in backends and front end folders. Now, if we run npm install, that's going to get us all the dependencies that it needs to run both our front end and back end services. And then once that is done, we need to start these services. So our backend is running on 8081 and our front end's running on 8080. So we're ready to test our application. Our backend is on 8081 and our front end is on 8080 talking to our backend. So we have an application that's running through Visual Studio Code. Now at this point, if I wanted to deploy this application into GKE, I would first need a cluster to create. And then once the cluster is created, then I can start deploying this application. So let's see how we can create a cluster from within Visual Studio Code. I have the extension for Visual Studio Code called GKE extension. And once you download that extension, you'll start to see your projects and your clusters in your IDE environment. I'm going to just use my current one of the current projects and create a cluster in the current project. So my current project is KQ demo. And so we'll set that as a project ID, and then it gives me an option to select the zones. And then here we're just going to say test as a cluster name, and then there's the number of nodes that you want to create that you can change, and then also the machine types. We're just going to go with the standard and click create. Once I do that, it takes maybe 3 to 4 minutes to actually create the cluster. It's spinning up all these instances in Google Cloud for you. And if I refresh this, you should be able to see that it's starting to bring up the test cluster right here. It's orange because it's not set up yet. So give it a few minutes and it starts to set up. At this point, we're going to just use for the demo purpose a cluster that I already have created, and we'll go through the demo using that cluster. Now, once I have the cluster, I'm ready to deploy, and I need a scaffold YAML to actually deploy in the cluster.
Okay, and for those who might not have heard of Scaffold, what is that?
So Scaffold is basically a command line tool that lets you define your Kubernetes manifest. It also defines the container registries, and then for the back end and the front end, and especially for our application here. So if you have a large number of services that are running in your application, you would define your container registry addresses in there, and would pick up from those addresses and deploy your service in GKE.
Great.
Yeah. So let's see an example of that. So I'm just first going to go through deployment. I think I forgot to set the cluster. So let's first set this cluster. Once it is set, then we're going to deploy. Take the deploy and do that. Starting to deploy. While it's deploying, let's look at our scaffold YAML. This is the YAML I was talking about, where you have the backend and the front end and the gcr.io addresses, which is the container registry address, and then the manifest for your Kubernetes. And it seems like we have our application deployed. So let's see the IP address. That's the IP address of our application. It's the one that we just created. And we see that the application is working on port 4000. So our front end is talking to our back end, both of them now deployed on a GKE cluster. So we did all of that from our IDE, and yeah.
That's fantastic. I guess the next step that I would think of is making changes to, let's say, our back end without affecting our front end. So for example, what if I want to test to make sure that my change doesn't break anything without needing to redeploy and rebuild?
That's a great point, because in a development life cycle, that's the biggest hurdle. You test, you develop, you test, and then you want to deploy that. But the test stage is a very critical stage. So you would use something called telepresence for that. And telepresence is again a command line tool that helps you create a proxy. So in this case, in this example, what we're going to do is create a proxy and run our backend on local machine, and then our front end would continue to run on our GKE cluster in production. So we're able to test the changes to our backend, but our front end stays intact.
Okay.
So let's see that. Yeah. So in this case here, so I'm going to come out of this and let's see where we are. I want to go into the application that we just deployed, which is this. And let's make a little bit of a change here in our front end application so that we can use a little bit of I just called it version 2 for our backend. And at this point, if I run my telepresence command, which is nothing but it creates a proxy, and it's going to run it on port. So here it is, it's forwarding the ports now, and if we go test our backend on our local machine, that's going to version 2, and it should work the same way from our front end as well. So that's pretty much how it works.
Very impressive. So we were not only able to see you being able to redeploy using your local IDE to GKE using Cloud Code and Scaffold, but you were also able to make changes locally to a single service, test it, and then again redeploy to GKE once
Pretty
we're using,
powerful, yeah.
Yeah, telepresence. Okay, well thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's send it over to Rado.
Thank you very much, Priyanka and Stephanie. Stick with us and we're going to take you to the showcase floor, where we'll see about living a life of code. You're watching the next live show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the next live show. I'm Rajah.
And I'm Stephanie Wong. We'll be here for all 3 days of the conference, sharing the Google Cloud Next experience with you wherever you are. If you missed anything or want to rewatch and share a video you like, head to g.co/nextonair. While you're there, check out our other 5 channels organized by theme: build, run, analyze and learn, secure, and collaborate.
Now let's head over to the showcase floor where our reporter Natalie is checking out the Cloud Run demo.
Hi everyone, we're here at the Life of Your Code demo, and I'm joined here by Grisha. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what you've made.
Awesome, so I lead product marketing here in Google Cloud for our serverless products, and we recently announced a product called Cloud Run today, and I'm really excited about that.
Great, can you show us what it does?
Super, so I'm just going to build a simple app, and we're going to get started here. So what we're doing right now is think of the train as the app itself. So we are going to start by sort of customizing it first and building our train, so building the app. Adding a different components like compute, database, and so on to the train. Building the train, so it's checking for security vulnerabilities and all of those in the second step. And then finally, we're going to deploy it and we'll be able to see it in the big screen.
Awesome, let's get started.
Super, so getting started here, adding a train car first. So the first thing that we're going to add is the engine itself. So engine here is the compute platform. So let's start with the compute. So Cloud Run is amazing because it enables the developer to choose to write apps in any language they choose. So for example, with Node.js or C#, Python are the options we have here, but really any language they can choose to write their apps on, and it's totally fine. So I'm just going to select a blue color here and then getting started. So now that's our engine. So we're going to add a second train car here. So now what we are doing is, so this is a passenger carriage. So what it's doing is it's letting us select our language in terms of adding a Docker file to the app itself. So as a developer, if I'm a Java developer, for example, and the cloud vendor doesn't support Java, that's totally fine. I can specify the Docker file, and it's going to package my app into a container, and it's going to deploy it. So that's what we're seeing here. So I'm going to select Go. Let's do this colorful. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks cool. Little polka dots.
And so finally, now what we're going to do is add a database to it. So this is a database that I'm going to add, because databases are an essential component of building an app. So there are different options that you can add if you want to integrate it with Cloud Run. So we have a few options here like MongoDB or Redis or Postgres. Really, it works with any of our Google Cloud offerings as well. So you can, a lot of options to choose from. So let's select one of these, a green color. Let's go ahead.
Right, so we've completed the build.
Yeah, so now what we have here is, this is the app. So think of it as a developer writing code for the entire app, and they're ready to go. As a developer, this is all you will have to do, right? Which is core to what they're doing. They don't have to worry about, the infrastructure, scaling it up and down, monitoring it, managing it. All of that has gone away.
Just focus on the code.
Just the code. Just focus on the code.
Perfect.
So now I'm going to complete the build. So now what it's doing is it's pushing the code to Cloud Run. So it's checking for security vulnerabilities. It's making sure the build image, the container image is being created. So now you can see the scanning, the security scanning for the code as well using Cloud Build. And now all of this is complete. We're going to give it a name.
Your initials, G, S. Great. Ta-da!
Yeah, so now we're going to just deploy it. This is the exciting part. So the train is actually going to be seen on the large screen in just about a second now.
Awesome. Oh, there it goes.
That's the app, the fun train. So now what it's doing is it's going through the train station of the QPS there, where it's getting a ton of traffic. So think of your app as a lot of users using your app, so it's getting a lot of traffic. And Cloud Run will automatically scale your app from zero, literally, if there's no traffic, to whatever instance it needs, and then bring it back down to zero, all in just within seconds.
Wow, that was a really great demonstration. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And back to you.
The last sessions of the day are coming up. Be sure to tune back in to the next live show tomorrow morning at 8:55 a.m. We kick off day 2 with the product innovation keynote, followed by an exclusive interview with Google Cloud's Director of AI Strategy, Tracy Frey.
And remember, check out our library of content from Next 19 at g.co/nextonair.
Stay tuned for the last sessions of the day. Have a great evening, and Rado and I will see you back on the next live show tomorrow.